Perfect. Hey, David, mate, thank you so much for joining me at such short notice. I think the turnaround time was, 24, 48 hours to get on board with this. So, look, I really appreciate it, mate. And I'm really looking forward to kind of learning a little bit about the systems that physio owners really need to know to getting their business online. So just a quick introduction with David. He'll probably tell you a little bit more about himself, but I've been using his software system hub for 5 years now. And when I was talking to a lot of physios, they were discussing on, what new systems do I need when I'm quickly moving to telehealth? And I thought no better guy to talk to than David. He's done a TED talk on systems, literally a TED talk, mate. So look, I'm just going to let you just start taking it away. You know what to do. Maybe start with this little bit of introduction of yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks for inviting us on. And yes, I think over the last sort of couple of weeks in particular, things have got a very hectic for a lot of different business owners. And I do own a business called System Hub, and we have some technology we call systemology. It's all about systems thinking and seeing your business as a system, and the systems that, like the subsystems that make up the system as a whole, which we'll kind of talk about, and we'll give you some visuals so you can get an idea. But obviously with the current climate, I know the business owners that I'm chatting with, they're at various different levels and how they're surviving. And I'm finding, as I've been running some calls, I've created a bit of a process for like a triage, thinking about your business, thinking about where it is right now, and thinking about the timeline. What are the if you think about the 80-20, what are the 20% of the actions, the systems and the processes that you need to get into place right now to pull you through those next 90 days? So that way you make the transition, as things are probably going to get a little bit more turbulent, but you can also look how you start to shift your business online, and what are some of the products and services that you can offer. So
Right,
that
I agree on that as well. A lot of people, I think, are thinking they need to do absolutely everything, can make the system perfect before they start. So the 80-20 and getting that the majority of stuff right first, figuring out the perfectionist things later, as I 100% agree with.
Yeah, and now especially because I mean we you don't have much time, and there's a lot of things to be done, so we need to kind of really narrow in. So I think, I mean, first up, I think for the businesses that I've been chatting with at the moment, they're kind of usually in one of three places. Some of them are dead on arrival, some of them are surviving, and then some of them are quite strong. Now, when I think of dead on arrival, usually that's frontline business. That's travel, retail, tourism, automotive. They might not have had any cash reserves, and pretty much they're almost like out of business. And that's very hard to move from that place. If you are in that place, you're probably going to have to do some form of reinvention. So you might be able to rebuild your business, thinking, how are you going to build it to live in a world where it's important to have online as a real core component. Then kind of the middle of the road is surviving. Usually surviving, I would say, is moderate impact. They might have some cash in the bank, so they've got a little bit of time up their sleeves, or maybe they've got very low overheads, so it's not like they're completely out of business. And then some, you've got strong. Those are the ones that might be benefiting from the current climate, where everybody's buying toilet paper, or maybe they're doing some sort of skip bins, which I'm told are doing incredibly well because people are at home cleaning out their houses, or maybe it's hand sanitizer. So there are industries that are on the rise up. There are some that are kind of in the middle, and then some at the end. So of the ones that you've been chatting with, Chris, where are you finding the physios would kind of fall on this continuum?
Look, the majority would be, I would say, from surviving to strong, because most physios have a loyal customer base, and they've had many years of really helping out patients. I think that they're in a relatively strong position. Majority of what I'm talking physio practices who I'm talking to are 10, probably 10 staff and below. 10 and above, it's likely that they have already moved to telehealth and already made the
Yeah.
move, probably a year ago or something. And so they can they've already ramped up their systems, right? But it's more the smaller practices that I just really need the help at the moment. So I would say not a lot is dead on arrival, more in surviving,
Yeah.
but open to learning. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, the other thing to think of there, it's good that that's kind of where they are. And I'm imagining most of the people are going to come to you when they're in that sort of range. Because if they're on dead over on arrival, they're probably out of business as it is, and they've got very little options. The good thing is, if you're in this little green zone that I've just done there, you have got some options. And you know, that's really what it's all about today. How do we extend your timeline out? How do we take advantage of this new economy that's going to bubble up and the different opportunities? I'm definitely forever the optimist. I'd like to think that, seeing what's happening with Singapore and South Korea, getting the COVID-19 stuff under control. China, look, we can't really trust China's numbers, but I think it gives us an idea from a timeline perspective. You should really be planning for, I would say at least 3 months. 90 days is the timeline that I would be thinking about planning for things. Yes, it's going to get a lot worse. Yes, the media is going to go completely nuts. Yes, it'll get harder. But if you can make it through those 90 days, I think you've got a much greater chance of success of surviving on the other side. So that's really what I want to focus on. What are the systems that you need to have in place to make it through the next 90 days?
I agree, Matt. And just on that quickly as well, before we move forward, is that I think even though we're going to get through this 90-day period of a little bit of hardship, I think this virus has fundamentally changed the way we will look at health as a client or a patient perspective. They've never really had the need to, unless they're remote, to use a telehealth service, and therefore they've never seen the benefit of it. This virus has now forced people to use telehealth, and they'll see how easy and really how great the software can be. So I think that even though we've got through this, we'll get through this 9 days. We'll get on the other side. It'll be all right. I think that telehealth is only going to get absolutely stronger. And
Sure.
if you're a physio practice, you should continue doing it after this 90 days, because it's a good additional add to your revenue.
And a de-risker, heavily
Yeah.
de-risks you now, because who knows what other things like this is going to happen. I think, you want to think about making your business as solid as possible to weather any financial storm, anything that the world throws at you. And part of that has to have an online component. And I know there's going to be a huge rise in just people being more comfortable with it. So not only are you able to deliver the services, but your clients and prospects are going to be looking for those services too, because they're now going to be comfortable and familiar with that. It's not going to be so foreign to them. So it's a huge opportunity for the person who's a bit more forward thinking.
Agree, mate. I agree. Yeah, I
So
agree.
I think the way that I think about business, and this is the 80-20 of your business, which systems do we need to get into place? I think of your business, if we class this one big circle that I've done here, we'll just call this your business. And it is a system that is also then supported by subsystems. So potentially in the middle here, and I'll just do it short, maybe that's operations. Let's do sales up here, and marketing. And then we've got over here, let's call this finance. Down here, let's call this HR. And then over here, let's call it management. Now, everybody's got potentially different departments within their business. As long as you get the concept that your business is a system, the health of that system is made up of these subsystems, and you can even drill into a subsystem even more. So there are a collection of systems, processes, and how you do what you do underneath each of these different departments. For the purposes of today, we're really just going to focus in on 3. This is the, again, 80-20. What is the 80-20 of the systems that we need to start to get right, to make sure that we get through the next 90 days. We need to make sure that our finances are rock solid. We need to make sure that there's good management strategy and we're feeding the right information through to our team. And then we need to make sure our sales and marketing is correct as well. So they're the three we're going to have a look at. And effectively, I'm going to then 80-20, the 80-20. I want to now dive into each of these departments and go, well, what are the top three in each of these different categories that I'd be thinking about? So if we think of the first one that we were going to have a look at are our finances. Now, again, if someone's arrived in, even if they're in survival and maybe edging up to strong, I would still think the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're very clear on your current financial position. So when I think of a system, when I'm talking about systems and processes, I'm just meaning a set of repeatable tasks that someone might follow to create a consistent outcome. You should have a system that tells you at any one point in time what your current financial position is. Because once you kind of have a clear picture of your current financial position, and I'll just grab here. Yeah, you clear picture of your current financial position. It can help you make decisions. So the first thing I would be looking at, some of these things you may already have in place or not, but if we just do this right here, I'd use Google Sheets or Excel or whatever you're comfortable with. I would be writing out a spreadsheet and I would list in, cash out, and I'm simplifying it just for now, but you want to keep it high level, and cash at bank. I would be updating this weekly. So starting from here, pick a day in the week and literally how much cash came in for the week. Write it in here. How much cash went out for the week? What does your current bank balance look like? This needs to be a system that you put into place that you calculate once a week, whether you do it or your bookkeeper does it or your accountant. You need to be looking at it because this tells you exactly where you are. It's a very simple system that you may or may not already have in place, but that's the first thing that I would look at.
Who do you think is the best person to do this? Say in a practice of maybe 5 people with a receptionist and a couple of physios.
Yeah, look, most likely probably your bookkeeper, because your bookkeeper is going to be doing, or whoever's doing your reconciling in Xero or MYOB, whatever you're using, because they would have access to this data in a heartbeat. It wouldn't take them more than 5 minutes to create.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So that would be the first one. The next system that you need to think about is a forecast system. So the forecast, just as the name kind of predicts or suggests, is we want to understand. There we go. Yeah, we want to similarly understand what does our timeline. We need to kind of start to do a little bit of guesstimate information here. So the first one we need to think about is our revenue. So let's say now, if the previous one, this current position, we're doing on a weekly basis, I would say this one, depending on the size of the business, but you wouldn't want to be doing it anything less than monthly. And what you're looking to know here is your revenue, whether or not you've got any, or we call it COGS or cost of goods, which might be particular things that are required for you to do business. Then we've got your expenses, which might be your fixed overheads and things like that. But what you want to try and do, and then we calculate this out down here, which is net. So we guesstimate, and I always, whenever I'm calculating any forecast, it's always worst case scenario. Always think if you had a drop off in clients, what would that look like? You want to plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And you would, let's just say we are, end of March at the moment. So this one, you would start off as April. And we want to be thinking the next 3 months. At minimum, we're looking 90 days out. You can go further, but at minimum, it's those 90 days out. You start to enter in what you think your revenue will be, what your cost of goods are, and then list out all of your expenses. These are just what I'm talking about here is, this would be a job for your bookkeeper. They would pull the data directly from Xero or MYOB. This data is already there and already being calculated and created. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. All we're trying to do is then do a little bit of forecasting. And what you want to do then is you then calculate your net, which is your revenue minus your COGS minus your expenses, gives you what your net is. Now, the next thing that you need to think about a little bit further down here is you then grab your cash at bank. Now that is exactly what we talked about on the previous page. And you might go, great, I have, X thousands of dollars in my bank account. And once you start to calculate out your net, if you're seeing negative numbers here, because you're expecting a dip in sales or, if you're not getting the new clients on board, whatever that may be, then effectively what you start to do is you take your number cash at bank and you minus how much, whatever the net is for the month. And that recalculates out your cash at bank. So now what you're doing is you're creating a timeline for yourself. If things go really badly and you did start losing money, then how long do you have? Because we know at some point in time, this is going to turn around. And all I really want you to do, this might even currently work out to be a positive number. If you're in a market where it's a rising tide, fantastic. Or maybe you're really, really strong, or maybe you've already pivoted to telehealth, then you're okay. But all we do is by doing this, and you've got a timeline, the more time you've got, the more options you've got. And the more options you've got as a business owner and an entrepreneur gives you more time to adjust. So that's part of what I'd be doing at forecasting. The last thing I do under forecasting, and I do it separately, I do it underneath. I don't want it as part of the calculations up here, but I would thinking about any extra cash that you might be able to get your hands on. So what is extra cash? Extra cash might be government handouts. We know that they're going through figuring out what the entitlements are and things like that. Maybe extra cash is being able to defer your BAS, or maybe extra cash is, that you might be able to negotiate with your landlord and defer the rent, or whatever it is. Calculate those, and then you can start to list them out and when they're going to fall due here. Now, this is the icing on the cake, because this is extra money. Don't bank on it. But if it comes in, again, what does it do? It extends out your timeline. It increases your cash at bank, and then it buys you more time to kind of navigate through these waters. So that's, what I would be thinking about here. For that second one, any comments or thoughts on that one, Chris?
Mate, look, that's perfect, to be honest with you. That's exactly what we all need to kind of sit down and take a deep breath. And a lot of people, I would assume, wouldn't have thought of going through this. So just understanding, if I've got 5 staff and there's a decrease in the amount of patients coming in, then how many patients do I need to make sure I break even or get that 3 months leeway? Yeah,
exactly right. And then that almost leads into the final point for this finances section, which is now, what can we do to reduce expenses or find any income? So now then becomes the time to reduce any waste. If there are subscriptions that you've signed up for, programs, cash going out, if you can defer any sort of payments, if you were going to make a capital investment for something, if you knew that you had a big expense coming up, anything like that, you want to start to think now, we shrink that as much as possible. Again, what does that do? Buys us more time. Time gives us more options. So that's the next thing I would be thinking about. And similarly, you start to come up with a bit of an order of some action items. So you start to think about, okay, well, what are some ways that we need to potentially reduce those expenses, or potentially even generate some extra cash. So if it comes down to wages, one of the last things that you want to do would be to let go of staff, but maybe you can do things, come up with the ideas up front. Hey, maybe I can get my staff to go down to 80% or 70% of their time. And you do that early on, and you do it across the board. Again, gives you more lower expenses, which then gives you more time. Maybe you can start to think about, to increase cash. So it's a combination of reducing those expenses with maybe more aggressive measures, but maybe also it's finding extra cash as well. So what does that look like? That might be going to your bank and asking for extra lines of credit. It might be going to the bank and seeing if you can get some sort of mortgage repayment holiday. You just want to think about all these things up front, whether or not you need to take advantage of them. Like, the idea of getting an extra line of credit from the bank. You're better off asking for it now, when maybe things are looking as best as they will. You may or may not end up using it. But at least, again, it just buys you extra time, because we will come out the other side of this. The game you're playing here is, how do we just make sure we come out the other side in the best possible shape, so that we can then ride the wave as it starts shooting up again. So that's probably the next thing I would be thinking of. So that really is our finance. The three key systems here. You want something for your current position. Needs to be a system that you're reviewing weekly and chatting with your accountant or bookkeeper on. Your forecast, I would be doing this monthly. Similarly, you also want to be reviewing it on that regular basis and getting it readjusted, because all new information that comes in, the government comes out and announces a new grant or an extra handout. You want to add that into your calculations. You might find that there are some changes when you chat with your accountant, or maybe you see a dip in some clients or increase in clients. You just keep that adjusting, but at minimum you would do that monthly. Then your expenses, I would be acting on this straight away, thinking about how to decrease and what are some options for finding cash if you needed to. The next section we'll move into now is management. So this is, let me just have a quick look and see. Just trying to make sure, because I'll send these notes to Chris. I'm going to make sure that...
that will be great. And guys, if you're watching this, I'll link it directly underneath the video, so you can download them.
Perfect. And I'll just color code this so that way it's just a little bit more clear. So yeah, that's right. And then now we're up to management, which is kind of like our new department here. Okay, so for management, the first thing that you need to think about is your strategy. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, so with your strategy, you need to think about, what sort of pivots do you need to be making? Is it a minor pivot or is it a major pivot? And it's going to depend on where you are on that continuum that we talked about, and how quickly you're going to need to act and how comfortable you are. So if you're not already doing telehealth, it's going to be a bigger pivot than someone who's already got set up for telehealth and now they just need to accelerate in that. But you will have to think about where you are right now and what it is that you'll need to do. So a minor pivot might just be, well, you're already doing telehealth and you need to make some changes on the way that an incoming lead comes in and how you handle them, and maybe you do the first assessment is via a Zoom call or something like that rather than meeting in person. Or a more major pivot might be to move completely. Now, when I've run this webinar before, I'm talking with businesses in a variety of different industries. So I'm giving them lots of options and suggestions on what a small pivot is versus a large pivot. The example I might give is, like a minor pivot might be a restaurant that then decides they're going to double down on doing delivery services. Whereas a major pivot might be like a clothing store. My wife mentioned the other day, she saw a clothing store on Facebook selling hand sanitizer and toilet paper. And that for me feels like a major pivot.
That's a big pivot. That's a
Yeah, that's
major
right.
pivot. Yeah.
And I've heard of like a whiskey company and a few places that make alcohol that are pivoting to hand sanitizers because they've got all of the equipment to make hand sanitizer, and there's a bit of a rush on hand sanitizer. But
Yeah,
as far as
interesting.
a strategy perspective, and you're probably best to speak to this, Chris, what things should a physio be thinking about potentially on how they would change the way that they do business?
Look, and this is what I have been recommending lately, and especially this is specifically for telehealth, is that if you have the initial consultation in house, normally you would charge for that up front, and then you diagnose the pain, and then you build a treatment plan from there. The problem with telehealth is that the fact of the matter is you can't. Not every patient will benefit from online consultations. So first you need to understand whether you can help them or not. And from there, instead, the strategy change from there I would recommend is saying that first consultation, make it free, and make it a free 15-minute consultation so you can diagnose the pain and see what the problem is, and then see if you can help them over an online consultation. If you can't, you refer them. Refer them on to someone trusted. If you can, then you recommend a plan moving forward. So it's strategy-wise, it's a little bit different just because of the restrictions we have on the platform.
Yeah. I think the key is really just, thinking it through, seeing what adjustments need to be made. And then once you've got a clear plan, like you chat with someone like Chris, who can then tailor a solution for you and what your strategy might look like. And then what you want to do, the next piece of this is then you want to communicate that through to the team. So you want to be having regular updates. Like you want to, if it's just you, okay, great. But if you're a small team of 10, you want to tell them, well, here's what we're doing. Here are the changes. You as the leader as well, you need to set an upbeat tone. There's a lot of uncertainty going around. People are worried for their jobs. If you can reassure them, let them know that you're onto it, that's going to give them the confidence. Obviously, you also want to be as compassionate as possible and helpful as possible. Just understanding that your staff are one of your biggest assets, if not your biggest asset. So you want to do everything that you can to really look after and protect them, because in times of uncertainty like this, people will bond to you. If you can help them right now and you're a clear communicator and they feel comfortable with your organization, they're going to really be bonded to you. This is a fantastic time to deepen relationships with your staff, and also, which we'll talk about a bit later, also your current clients and things like that. You probably, around the communication and with your team as well, you really want to just start heavily developing your systems for working virtually. So, I mean, we working virtually. Obviously, Chris was just talking about just then about some of the strategy and the way that you might approach it. You want to come up with a bit of a rhythm where if you got staff and they're all working from home, well, you get Slack or Skype or something where everybody can check in at the start of the day. You want to make sure at the end of the day, they send in an end of day email where they kind of tell you, here's what we worked on for the day. You want to have individual phone calls with them. You just want to have someone not feel isolated, particularly if they're used to working out of a practice. And then this is really, really new for them. So that's another area as well, is communication.
Do you have any like maybe recommended software that they could get started for free? It's like a tool they could get on. Is there
Yeah,
anything you
yeah.
prefer?
There's probably two. From a video, Zoom. Last time I checked, you can have calls up to 40 minutes, and you can have little groups on them on a free account. The other one, something like Slack, which is more of a text messaging thing, they've got a free option as well. So between the two tools, I think a Slack and a Zoom will probably cover more than what you need at zero cost.
And so you recommend, say, like a daily meeting in the morning, in the afternoon. What do
Yeah,
you
it
recommend there?
depends on the team. Like our business, I feel like we've been preparing for social isolation and working from home for the past 20 years because that's just how we work. So we usually just have people check in via Slack on our group channel, and we're all commenting throughout the day, just kind of checking in. They'll say hello, blah 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 blah. We'll have calls occasionally if we've got to follow something up. We don't have a set huddle at the start or at the end of the day, but I know people who do. So it will depend on your team. You just kind of find your cadence. I think the key is just to make sure that you've got something regular and consistent, just so everybody can kind of check in.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, I'll link those two tools as well underneath the video once we're done.
The final one that we'll talk about underneath the management section, and it kind of relates to exactly what we talked about. It really is. It's what I call the meeting cadence, and you need to find what's right for your company. And I would be thinking about, firstly, you got your three key areas, your finance, and you want to, under each one of these, so finance, management, and then also our sales and marketing, which we'll come to in a moment. But for the first, for these, you want to make sure that they're on the calendar. You want to be looking at the current cash position, the forecast position, and reviewing your expenses and finding income. You get that on the calendar and do that once a week. Your management, really, you should probably have a weekly management thing where you're looking at what your strategy is. If anything needs to be adjusted, that then needs to be communicated through to the team. And that needs to happen on that consistent basis. And then we'll talk about some sales and marketing. You just want to make sure that a lot of these things, when I talk about systems and processes, they're not one-time affairs. These are things that require consistent attention. We talked about your business as a system, and there are these subsystems, and the health of these systems, really, that's what these meetings are about. It's about checking in the health on that department, determining the top 2 or 3 action items, and then communicating that through to the team that, hey, these are the top 2 or 3 things that we all need to be working on to get closer to the desired outcome. So that's the sales and marketing. The management. We'll move to sales and marketing now. But is there anything else to touch on there, Chris?
No, I think that's perfect, mate. Yeah. It's I highly recommend just jumping on and testing those tools, Zoom and Slack out as well. There's plenty of other tools out there, but they're free, so you may as well sign up and just have a go with your team and see what best works for you, really.
Yeah, perfect. So the last one that we want to talk about for systems is the sales and marketing. And to do the sales and marketing, I have a thing I want to kind of talk through that I call the marketing bullseye. And we'll break it into the action steps that you need to do. But I think if you understand this first, it kind of helps you figure out where you should actually focus. So if we go like this, we all know with a target, you want to be aiming at the center of the target. That's where you start. So if we think about each of these rings and what each one of them represent, the first one I'm going to say is existing clients. The next one out I'm going to call leads. The next one I'm going to call partners. Oh, next one I'm going to call cold. So now if we go through each one and think a little bit about the characteristics and why we would end up focusing there. So if you're going to start off marketing to anybody, going through to existing customers, seeing how you can support and help them, deepen the connection with them, they're always going to be the easiest to work with. We all know that your existing customers are the easiest to sell to. They the cheapest because you already have that relationship. It's, what do they say? It's 10 times easier to keep an existing client than it is to go out and get a new client. So you want to focus all of your marketing efforts at the center of the marketing bullseye first before you work your way out. Obviously, you also need to be cognizant of what's going on in the marketplace. You don't want to be tone deaf and be unaware of the struggles that different people are having. So sometimes when I'm on Facebook at the moment, I'm seeing these Facebook ads pop up and I'm thinking, are you even aware of what's going on in the marketplace right now? You're running this ad to me right now that clearly does not have any idea of what I'm thinking about.
Here's a perfect example, mate. My partner's sister was scrolling through Facebook yesterday, and it was a cruise company advertising that you should jump on to a cheap cruises right now. It's perfect time to go. And I was like, that is the perfect case of what not to do with new advertising, marketing to the wrong people at the moment.
Yeah, so it's that's right. You just have to be cognizant of that through each of these levels, thinking about where they're at. But you want to do everything that you can to outreach and communicate with those existing clients. You might, depending on, sometimes it makes sense to make them an offer. Hey, we have now decided we're going 100% telechoice. What do you call it? Is it
Telehealth.
telehealth? We've decided to go 100% telehealth. Because we're doing our bit to make sure that we kind of stop the spread of COVID-19. As a result, we're running a special where your first consultation you're going to get half price off. And as you get comfortable with the process and how it works, that might be something you could go out to all of your past clients and existing customers and make them that offer. So that would be working at the center of the circle. Then we kind of move out to the next ring, which is leads. So if we say here, you might have past leads, people you talked about doing business with or expressed some interest in the past with seeing you, but maybe they didn't book in an appointment, or they booked and they cancelled. Well, you can outreach to them and then again, make a similar offer. This is what we're doing. They already were pretty close to making a purchase, but for whatever reason, they didn't make a purchase. So now an offer might potentially get them over the line, and it's just really the outreach. The next ring out are partners. So this is where you want to be thinking, and I'm imagining in the health space, there are probably a lot of products and services that you could say are complementary to yours, but not necessarily competing to yours. So a good example, and you might be able to do something with them to tap into their audience or co-market, or any of those sorts of relationships are great to think about now. I was talking and consulting to a guy who runs a gym, and they're obviously closed down with all of the lockdown. He's looking at creating a survival guide for, being at home and, with exercise ideas and healthy eating and, how to keep yourself entertained. He's building out this guide. And I said, okay, well, think about as well all of the people that might be able to contribute to that, who have got the helpful products and services, but not necessarily competing, complementary services. So he's looking at people who are doing, healthy home delivered food choices. He's looking at the supplement company that is still delivering supplements, for health supplements. He's looking at connecting with companies that sell exercise equipment, and he's building out this guide, and he's going to be able to tap into them and then get them to share it as well, which is kind of also something Chris and I had been chatting about, and might be how you're seeing this particular video. So it's a great way to just kind of expand that reach and be helpful as well with an audience that you might not already be connected with.
Well, and as well with someone you might be connected, if there's GPs that are already recommending your or referring you clients, you can just ring them up and say, we are providing telehealth. Even ring up new new GPs as well, and saying that, look, if your existing physio provider does not provide telehealth, we can service them during this particular time. So, Matt, I can just see that's great partners. Of course, I don't know. It's a brilliant idea to quickly to quickly ring them up and tell them that you're still in business.
Yeah, definitely. And you might be one of the few providers in your space who are doing that. So yeah, I think it just makes sense to get that message front and center. Now, the last one we've got here, I'll call as cold. Cold are people who don't yet know about you. The reason they're on the outside of the ring is because they usually take the most amount of work to convert. But when you think about it, the circle here, the bullseye, has a certain dynamic. On the center of the circle here, most likely to convert, but there are the least number of them. As you go further out the ring, the audience gets larger. So a cold audience is the largest audience. They'll take the most work to convert, but they're also the largest audience. That's why you work from the inside out. You work with what's easiest to convert, but as you move further out, cold audiences can be great, assuming you've got a great offer. So you have to think about what the great offer is that's very relevant, topical, and helpful right now. And that's really what you want to kind of be marketing towards. So if you think about this now from an action item point of view, I would, under this section, sales and marketing, step 1, I would be thinking about your existing clients. How do you communicate with them? How do you be helpful? And if you've got an appropriate offer, how do you make it? Step 2, I would be thinking about your existing leads. What existing leads do you have? What is a way to be helpful, to re-engage with them right now? Let them know that you're still in business and make them an offer. Step 3 here is then to outreach to any potential partners, doctors, whoever's referring you business at the moment, people in the community. How can you engage with them to get them sending you business? And then the fourth one, which feeds also into, when you do the strategy section underneath management, you might come up with a pivot, an idea, a product or service that you can bring out that you think is really relevant right now. You might come up with that offer, and then we're down here, and then we're marketing it to the relevant people. For the offers to work right now, the other thing I would consider, keep in the back of your mind where the rising tides are. There are certain industries that are performing well. So if you can have an offer that somehow links in or markets to an audience that's on a rising demand, if that makes sense for you, that's always a good idea. I think it's probably a little bit different in the health space, but hopefully that gives you an idea on how to prioritize things. I know, Chris, you've got a deep knowledge around the sales and marketing side of things. So I don't know if there's anything additional you wanted to add here?
Look, I've built out quite a comprehensive section actually within this article that you're seeing, this video. Right down the bottom there is marketing as well. So now I've kind of more or less built out more in depth on each main step. So without taking another hour, 2 hours to go into our marketing, we'll just go down to that section. You'll probably see another video as well, and list out step by step on how you can really outreach to your customers.
Well, I think, we're into the final sort of little run here of a few things that I wanted to talk about. I think there, at this point in time, you think about what we just did. We went through finances and we picked the top 3. We went through management. We picked the top 3. We kind of went through sales and marketing. We've picked the top 4. Now, the aim of the game, step 1, is really to survive. Once you get your survival down, it's like fitting your own mask. You fit your own mask before you help others. So you make sure that you fit your own mask. Then step 2 is help, which that seems to be the time at which Chris and I connected. So Chris made sure that he was covered under survive, And the next thing he started thinking about, my outreach to me, was I'm in help mode now. Who can I help? Because I'm okay. Then the next step after that is then we think about opportunities. Now, there are going to be an absolute truckload of opportunities that will come off the other side of this. And there's a variety of reasons. One, typically speaking, change management and change is one of the most difficult things that happens over a very long period of time. But right now, in times of huge disruption and big change or disruption, what happens is people's resistance to change lowers. So it's so much easier right now, easier than ever, to start to change the way that you do business. Your staff will just accept it. Your clients will just accept it because there is a bunch of change here. So if you want to change anything in your business, if you want to make it more like a stronger, fitter, leaner, better managed business, you will never have an opportunity to make that change as easily as you will now. What will become very clear for a lot of businesses is how bad their systems and processes are. Because what ends up happening is the weak businesses are the ones that are coming under the financial stress is because they don't have systems and processes in place to get a pulse on where their business is at, to spot changes early, to be able to adjust and pivot, to not have financial reserves put aside. Now, yes, some businesses, they are going to be dead on arrival because they are in an industry that is right on the front lines. But there are a heck of a lot that are going to be in survival mode that they could actually be quite strong. The only reason they're in survival mode is because their business is, running reasonably poorly, and they were just surviving because the market was doing quite good. Kind of feels like now we're starting to sort the men from the boys, I suppose, or the women from the girls. Like, this is the opportunity where we kind of see who really has the business chops. And systems thinkers, they have a distinct advantage in business because they understand how things work. They see it as a system. They see the subsystems and the systems that support those. And they're able to spot issues early on, make adjustments, solve problems quicker, and then they shoot out the other side. So that's probably one thing to think about. The other thing around the three big opportunities that are going to happen, the first one are the markets. There is going to be a flood of new clients and prospects for you that are going to come into the market. Lots of physios are going to go out of business. They're going to have a big client pool that they were servicing, that those clients will now no longer be doing business with them because they're out of business. So if you're able to come through here, there will be a huge opportunity for you to grab a larger market share and pick up new clients because you pivoted and you made that adjustment quickly, and that then set you up for success. So there's going to be a huge movement around the markets. The second one is talent. There will be huge opportunity for physios. There's going to be a bunch of these big physio businesses that weren't well set up, that were poorly managed with bad systems, and they go under. Those physios are then going to get released back into the pool, and those physios that aren't well equipped to go solo will then be looking to, well, where am I going to work? Again, another opportunity to pick up great talent. Or maybe it's a bookkeeper, or maybe it's a marketer, or maybe it's an admin assistant. There's going to be all of this great talent that's going to be released back into the marketplace that you'll be able to get access to quite cost effectively that you might not have previously because their previous employers have gone out of business. Again, another opportunity. The last opportunity, and this is probably for those that are cashed up and in a position or strong on the other side, are acquisitions. There are going to be businesses that go out of business or that are just hanging on, and you might be able to buy your competition or complementary businesses for pennies on the dollar. because they're just not going to be strong, and you're going to be able to kind of move in. I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here. And the real key is just being a strong leader, making decisive choices, because the choices that you make now are going to have a huge impact. If you think about this right now, this is you, this is where you are. Let's shoot ahead and say, you know, this is 90 plus days. That's what we'll say this line is here. And, you know, at this point, in fact, I think the lesson here is write the word first before you draw the box. But here we go. Strong, survive, and dead on arrival. So you are over here right now. At the end of this 90-day period, are you going to be strong? Are you going to be surviving? Or are you going to be dead? Now, if you do nothing, you will be dead on arrival. There is too much change. You have to take some action. No action, you will just drift down. Even if you take some action, you will only survive, because just you have to take some action to hold on. No action, you will die, but you have to take very decisive action if you want to get up to strong. If your desire is to be strong, if your desire is to take advantage of some of those opportunities, you must make decisive action now and install some of the things that Chris shares with you, some of what you'll hear on this webinar right now. But you need to make that decision and then start taking the right actions. Now, the reason I show you this is it's a very important chart, because as time passes, the longer that you take, the harder it is to jump lines. So if you kind of do some action here, you'll notice the distance between these 2 points gets further apart. As time passes, you will lose options. As you lose options, it gets harder to jump the line. So if you're going to do anything, now is the time to take as many strong actions as you can, because it is the easiest that it'll ever be. The last thing, I'll finish on a story, and then I want to maybe get Chris to chime in and get his thoughts on anything he wanted to add. But for me, when I think about my career and how I've got up to where I am, in a former life, I used to own a rock and roll clothing music store called Planet 13. And we used to sell Metallica t-shirts and AC/DC stickers. And, you know, we built that business up. We had 25 staff. We had 3 retail stores. We were wholesaling. We had our first franchise, and we were importing from China. Then we had a series of unfortunate events. We had a shopping center open competition up 3 doors down from us. Literally our direct competition opened up right next to us. The GFC hit, the global financial crisis, and we saw a little bit of a shrinking in extra discretionary money. Just the rag trade in itself is incredibly hard. It was a bricks and mortar business. We had huge outgoings on wages and rent. And the market started to shift because trends in that space changed very quickly. Long story short, that business went out of business. On the way down, I tried to prop the business up by purchasing more, because it was me and a few business partners. I purchased more shares in the business, putting more money in, buying more shares, which meant at the end, I was actually more liable for bigger debts, because when the business folded, we still had to break the lease and then pay the lease, because shopping centers are brutal when it comes to breaking leases. I had to cover more of the debts for stocks and supplies and all that sort of stuff. And at the time, it got me pretty down. Like, I remember it was a very challenging time. And it's funny though, I look back now, and it's only with the benefit of hindsight, but you know, we're more than 12 years on since then, and a lot has happened. And I feel that's where I earned my stripes in navigating through difficult times. That's when I developed much of my IP around systems and processes, and the way that I see different departments working. Out of that, my digital agency was born. That was the business that came after that. Without that period, I wouldn't have learnt how to systemize business. I wouldn't have stepped out of the operations. I wouldn't have hired a CEO. I wouldn't have developed System Hub and Systemology, which I believe Systemology is the most impactful work that I've got that will have the biggest impact on small businesses worldwide. And I don't, the reason I tell you that is, yes, it's going to get hard. And it is going to get a lot harder before it gets a lot better. But there will be opportunities that come from this. This will shape you into the future leader that you will be. And I always remember whenever I look at any bear markets, like whenever I see the stock market and difficult times, GFC, always on the other side of those, it's followed by a bull market. So the bear market is on the way down, a bull market is on the way up. So I sometimes think of it now, and I'm wondering if you might do the same, is just to think, what if adversity and challenge and what you're about to go through right now is a leading indicator for success and opportunity? You make it through this 90 days and you'll shoot off like a rocket. A lot of people won't make it through. So obviously, we're here to help, and Chris and myself, we're just an email away. You can email me, support@systemhub.com. I've got a podcast you can sign up to try and fill your brain with some good stuff. But that's the bulk of what I wanted to cover today.
Mate, and I 100% agree. And what's the saying? It's like, when times get tough, the tough get tougher.
Yeah, that's
and so, I 100% agree with that. Like right now, in the next 30 days, look, we are going to have to hustle a little bit. But it will be setting us up for the next 10 years. And I was talking to actually one of my mentors just the other day, and I was like, all right, well, his name's Matt. I was like, Matt, what are you doing during this time at the moment? He said, mate, I'm setting myself up for the next 10 years. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, well, look, right now I'm doing some planning and I'm working hard. While he's in a relatively nice financial stance, he's just like, this is what I recommend to you do, is you work hard over these next 90 days, because it's like compounding interest, right? What you do over the next 90 days will compound and grow even faster over the next 10 years. You set the foundations and you move quickly now. In 10 years' time, you'll be looking back at that situation, glad you went through that little bit of hardship, that little bit of pain, and dug your heels deep and went for it, because it will pay off in the future in a compounding effect. And so that was after I had that conversation with him, I was like, all right, 24 hours of feeling bad for myself. Now I'm good. All right, let's get back into it. This is the opportunity of not a lifetime, but an opportunity of every 10 years, and let's make the most of it, mate.
I think you nailed it.
So is the best place to, like, how can I kind of go and see some more content you've curated, mate? Just let our viewers know that.
Probably the best place is just the podcast. It's a good free way to consume systems and processes that industry leaders share that are applicable in all industries, perfect for physios. We talk about finance systems, HR systems, marketing systems. So it's just systemhub.com/podcast. And that's probably a great place to get started.
Okay, cool, mate. Awesome. Well, other than that, mate, I've got nothing else to add. All my questions are actually written down. You just answered them as you were going through. So I was like kind of ticking them off. Perfect. That's what I want to know. Yeah, mate, once again, thanks very much for coming at such a short notice. I know this is going to help a lot. So yeah, if you have any questions, just don't hesitate to message us on email, or even message down at the bottom of this article. And David and I can probably go ahead and try answer them as quick as possible. But other than that, thanks, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.